It is a peaceful protest, remember? Yes. Peaceful protest. Yes.
What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? When?
How many people are Zikoko?
I heard about protests first on Twitter, and because they started in Lagos before spreading out to other parts.
Then I saw more people talk about a protest, to end SARS, and it's like, I feel like I'd heard this before, so I didn't think it was something to pay attention to. And then it was getting, more popular. I saw videos of rundown and files at one protest, and it was like, okay, the people are gathering.
I didn't know the events that led to the tweet, but I just saw that a protest was brewing and people were trying to organize like a protest, a nationwide protest.
Usually, like the protests you hear about, it's, this happened in 1970, Women's March, this and that. And suddenly it was like, yes, it's time. This is like history is happening right now. And so we joined the protest, or I joined the protest as well.
My first thought was we should have done this earlier.
I feel like one of our issues as a country is just that we all have very separate interests, but this one thing was simple. We just didn't want to be killed. We're not asking for better schools or better hospitals, which we need.
In the morning of the protest, because I'd made up my mind, like I said, so I kind of snuck out of the house. I had rolled up my placards in like a knapsack and just bounced. And when I got to the protest ground, it was crazy because there were so many people.
When you're going for something where you're meeting a lot of people that are also there for that thing, like you don't know any of these people, but if you had to talk to any of them at any point, you knew what you were going to be talking about. And so it was a bit heady.
A bunch of us had placards with, the EndSARS hashtag. A lot of the words we had said online, we put them on cardboard, and we were all gathered in one place, and we were going to march from one place to the other. That was set, but we didn't know if this was going to cause a splash or just a drop in the ocean. But we just felt, what, this is something we're doing. We're making it known, and we hope that people join us, and they did.
October 20th was a messed up day. It felt possible to me that people could be harmed by the government or by soldiers or by policemen. But at the same time, I knew it was possible it could happen. I didn't believe it would happen. I thought this time was different because we have like stories of so many protests in Nigeria ending in bloodshed, and the Shiites or Odi in Bayelsa and all those places.
Of course, at this time, we thought the Nigerian flag would save us in some way, so we had that in front of us when the police car approached. And yeah, like we had, our worst case scenario was tear gas, honestly. For weeks, I had this sodium solution in my wardrobe because it just was a reminder that was our worst case scenario, and then what happened. So yeah, that day, it was striking that we stood our ground, faced with guns, unsure of what was going to happen, but somehow also sure that we were fighting for a good enough cause that we would not get killed for it.
A few hours before the shooting at Lekki, there were already shootings at different parts of Lagos. Where I lived at the time, in Shomolu, was also one of the places where the shootings were going on, and it was so scary, and I didn't know what to expect. And then later that day, because there was a curfew, later that day, someone sent me a link to an Instagram Live, and what I saw was so devastating for me, and it was more worrying for me because I had photographer friends who were on the protest ground, and the uncertainty of what could have happened to them was really terrifying.
We didn't go out that day because of the curfew. I didn't, because I wanted to trust that this was the government saying, we're saying this, and we're going to treat you properly, I guess. So there was a lot happening on that day, and when I saw that people were still at the Lekki toll gate, because I kind of just left social media for a lot of that day. I'd been at the protest for like 5 days straight. I had lost my toenails. They had fallen off because I had spent so much time walking, looking for food for protesters, and so I needed time to kind of just rest. And that evening, you know, we started hearing about the shooting, and then I went to DJ Switch's live and saw these things happening. I was in shock initially. I was in shock. That was it. But for a lot of that night, it was mostly anger. I was just angry. Didn't react much, didn't cry, just sat there in stunned silence, I guess, until the next morning when my mother called to find out how I was. And then I started crying because it was the first time I had to actually answer the question.
October 20th was a lot. It was a lot of emotions. It was, on one part, I have to cover this. I have to write it for, you know, cover it so everyone else can see it. I have to document it. But on the other, it was watching people get hurt.
I think that the protest was the beginning of many more to come, and it was some sort of awakening among young people.
I'm glad the protests happened. We all have our reasons we joined the protest. Like, you probably have been affected by police, or you know someone who's lost something because of them. And so that definitely had to happen. Not glad about how it happened, you know, the lives that were lost due to it before, afterwards.
I think we did something with the protests. I think that even if it was for a short time, there was some kind of unity.
The events of the 20th sort of killed whatever hope I had left in this country, I think. I'm here because I have to be here. I don't have any grand dream of Nigeria becoming better, police brutality ending, us having better schools, better, because in my head, if we asked for one of the most basic things, the right to live, and we couldn't get that, what then is left?
Even though the events of October 2020 were traumatizing enough, I don't think that the solution is to sit back when another protest calls.
Police brutality, it still happens. It hasn't even reduced to me. Maybe they're a bit sneaky about it, or we don't get as much news, but I know that, you know, it keeps happening.
I've been stopped multiple times after the protest, which means that we have not yet achieved what we protested for. So, I mean, there's nothing that's not worth protesting for in Nigeria right now.